Yes.
Okay, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. We are starting webinar on distance learning in Africa during COVID-19 school closure. Thank you very much for joining us in your busy schedule. But, today, we are going to look at how teaching and learning is going on in a number of African countries. And also, we will be looking at the survey done by ADEA on the 12 countries. And then later, we'll be hearing from teachers themselves. My name is Yumiko Yokozaki. I'm a director of ICBA, and I'll be moderating this webinar session. Just before we start, a few housekeeping. If you are not speaking, please put the microphone and the camera off. This will improve the general connectivity of all of us. And then if you have a question, please look at chat. This is where you can put your questions. I see, and then also greetings. I see greetings from a Juba office. Without further ado, I'm asking Fenchon to give his introduction of this theme. Fenchon, over to you.
Thank you, Yumiko. Dear colleagues and participants, while we are waiting for the presentation to show on the screen, just a quick self-introduction. My name is Fenchon Miao. I'm the chief of the unit for the ICT education in headquarters. Currently, this unit is renamed to be a unit for technology and artificial intelligence in education. So today I want to share with you about what the UNESCO is doing and what we could support the country in planning and implementing distance learning solutions to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. The next slide, please. Yes, this is how we are planning what we are doing before and during the country support. First of all, we are already collecting the information a national distance learning platform, and we have collected and prepared the information on the 130 countries platform, and the main functionalities this national platform could support to teachers and students. And based on that, we conducted some in-depth analysis of 14 national distance learning strategy, meaning that the country are not only having a national platform, but developing a sector-wide strategy to provide immediate response and also ongoing response to the crisis, but also sometimes a long-term strategy on the distance learning. And at the same time, we are doing some analysis on the know-how of, I call it not only home-based, but home-confined, or we can call home-locked distance learning. And we have published one issue note. And based on this, we have been not only planning, but also providing some country support in terms of planning the distance learning solution. And sometimes we already reached the implementation level. For example, in Palestine, in Iraq, Mongolia, we are doing a lot of support. Next slide, please. We also analyze what are the phases we are facing and the country are facing in terms of responding to the COVID-19 crisis, especially when we are facing the COVID-19 school closures. I think all the countries are facing 3 stages. The first one is how to have a quick recovery and also immediate education response. And the main objective under this stage is how we can provide mental and psychological support to the kids, to the student, to parents, and also to teachers, and also to ensure the continuity of the curriculum study. That's the first stage. The second one is the monthly long kind of new daily routine of the distance learning activity and based at home. And under this one, there are some objectives, including continuous participation of students in the distance learning program, and also to ensure certain level of engagement of students and certain levels of the quality of the learning. And of course, in many countries, they are also promoting the actual curriculum activity for their kids, for example, home-based reading or home-based digital skill development. And after that, some of the countries, especially in Asia Pacific, particularly in Asia region, they are planning the reopening of the school. We call them post-pandemic new normal of education. And we hope that the country could carry on the technology-enhanced school system, meaning that if possible, we have a new teacher, we have some new learners who have improved digital skills and skills in using distance learning program. And if possible, if the country carry on very well, they should have a more open and crisis resilient school system. And of course, based on the future ready courses. Next slide first. And also, we are assessing the readiness of different countries. Different countries have different readiness. And at a different level, different stage, we should examine different readiness. For example, for the first stage, we should consider the technology and the content readiness. The second, for the stage 1 and stage 2, we should think of the pedagogical readiness, but also the home-based learning support readiness. And also over these stages, we should think of the monitoring and evaluation readiness from the country and the school system. And if the country would like to have a long-term impact, we need to look at the policy planning and financing readiness as well. Next slide, please. And at the different stage, we are analyzing the challenge and also plan how we should respond to them. First of all, for the first stage, for the immediate distance learning solution, and we're thinking of the technological readiness, including the national delivery system. This system could be the online platform, also could be the TV or radio-based programs, and even many countries are also still using the print material-based learning. And it's from the national delivery perspective. From the end user's perspective, we need to look at the readiness of the household access, including the electricity in African continent, and availability of TV, radio devices at home, and also household digital devices, including mobile phones and other digital devices, of course, including the internet connectivity. And in terms of content readiness, basically we are the mainstream content will be the curricular courses covering all the grade levels, all the subject areas, and this should be made accessible for all learners. And at the same time, the country need to think of the supporting material for the distance learning program. And for the pedagogical readiness at the immediate age, we need to think of the teacher's readiness. According to a UNESCO survey, not a very robust survey, at least 2/3 of the teachers don't have the skills and the readiness to design and facilitate the distance learning. At the same time, parents and caregivers are not ready. And even in many families, we don't have the parents and the caregivers available. Next slide, please. And of course, the digital divide is a serious problem, particularly in sub-Saharan African country. That's a survey summarized by an independent research institute, saying that less than 11% of sub-Saharan African countries are ready for online opportunity. That's why we cannot promote online learning as the only one or even the major solution to African country. We need to think alternative delivery mode. And even globally, less than 25% of low-income countries are ready for any types of distance learning, including the TV and radio-based distance learning. While on the other end, almost more than 90% of high-income countries are using online learning already. So we need to think who is being reached through the distance learning program, and how they have been reached, and who is not reached, and why they are not reached, and how we can do to reach them. And next slide, please.
Can you wrap up in a minute?
We are summarizing some good practice. The first one is equitable and inclusive technology delivery. We will find a lot of good practice. First of all, the country need to upgrade the bandwidth of the online platform, because suddenly overnight, almost all the teachers and the students who can connect to internet will go to the national platform to download the material. We need to upgrade the bandwidth. Secondly, we need to have a solution for students with special needs. For example, in Italy, they ensure that 89% of schools are putting in place some special applications programs available for students with different kind of disability. And at the same time, countries are taking strategy to support homeschooled devices. For example, Lithuania, they procure 35,000 computers for their more than 30,000 students from the disadvantaged family, meaning that they are covering all the students. And at the same time, many countries are taking kind of strategy to negotiate with the telecom sector to have a zero-rate education traffic. One of the good example is from South Africa. In this slide, I provide a hyperlink. If you have the slide, you can click out, you can find out the link of the web page, and you can get more information. And not only South Africa, but other countries, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and other countries are doing the same things. And also from the universal access to curriculum courses, of course, we hope that the country should have the capacity to self-develop the curriculum courses, and at the same time to think of the open educational resources, especially from the internet, from other countries, and from partner. For example, we have Khan Academy, we have Moodle. There's a lot of resources available. So the country need to align open educational resources with their national curriculum. And also we need to think of the language, especially in Africa. You have a lot of local language. If you are using TV channels, radio channels, this channel, if possible, should cover some local language. For example, in New Zealand, they are open 2 TV channels. One is supporting English, the other one is supporting indigenous language. At the same time, we are also from UNESCO doing a lot to promote the home-based reading material. For example, we have been promoting Global Digital Library, which was launched in Ethiopia twice, together with ICBA, with the UMIKO's team. And we are also, based on this one, launching in cooperation with a lot of partners, including ADIO, initiative we call Translate a Story, meaning that we are mobilizing volunteers to translate storybooks into local language to facilitate the home-based reading. Next slide, please. And for the second phase, the effectiveness of home-based distance learning, I think we are facing challenge. First of all, we need to understand, we need to know how about the home-based distance learning. The home-based distance learning have some special features because we are facing primary and secondary school students, which are usually different from the adult learner or university learners of the traditional distance learning program. So we need to think of the learners with the low self-regulation skill now are gaining autonomy, which is very different. And at the same time, the student teachers are facing physical and psychological distance. And at the same time, this distance learning will last daily and for very often 1 month, 2 months. So we need to think of the continuous learning motivation. So for this purpose, we are thinking of the monitoring and evaluation readiness. First of all, we need to ensure that all the distance learning program need to cover all the students. And we have some data, but many countries don't have a monitoring and mechanism to collect the data, how many percentage of the teachers and students are being reached. No monitoring mechanism. We call on more countries to put a monitoring mechanism in place. And the less availability of the data is about the participation. It's not only, for example, in some countries, they have online course. Some students register, even log in, but they are not learning. We call them digital dropout or digital absenteeism. So what's the rate in your country? If, for example, the Minister of France was saying that 5 to 10% of students are registered, log in, but are not learning. So we need data, we need monitoring, and we need a strategy to mitigate this. And also which means the level of engagement, disengagement is a big problem. And relating to this, as we said earlier, is the pedagogical support and the home-based learning support. We said that the teachers are not ready, parents are not ready, especially the parents with low or no literacy skill. They are not able to facilitate. And how we should respond. Next slide, please. We found some good practice And we need to talk about effectiveness from three perspectives. Effectiveness in terms of coverage of the distance learning courses, effectiveness of the engagement of students, and effectiveness in terms of the quality of learning outcome. And for this, we find that many countries are decentralizing the monitoring to school level, a school principal, education district to monitor. For example, in France, Italy, some of them are also taking a centralized monitoring survey. For example, Italy, they conducted a survey on the engagement participation, but the result has not been published yet. And some countries, they realize the dropouts and disengagement. They are taking strategy to be called a remedy strategy, for example, cyber camps or a free tutorial to remedy the loss of the learning hours and the low quality of the learning. And many countries are promoting the pedagogical support, including encouraging teachers to have more frequent formative assessment. For example, weekly, you have assessment, exercise, or every 2 days, every 3 days, and also providing guidance for teachers, guidance for parents. We have some example you can click out. Even in many countries, they provide a free tool hotline. The teachers can dial in to seek advices. And of course, we should support teachers' peer learning. And many countries are promoting teacher and the parents community. Next slide, please.
Please do wrap up.
Yeah, I'm wrap up. That's almost the last slide. And based on this, we need to think of the long-term impact. Many countries are planning the reopening of school. We hope that there will be inclusive return to schools, especially the girls will come back to schools. And of course, we should sustain the good practice. So meaning that, if possible, we have better technical readiness, we have distance learning courses and assessment development, and we have much improved the teachers' capacity and new pedagogy. And then, if possible, that will lead to a more inclusive and crisis-resilient school system. But before that, the country needs to put another two factors of success in place, including, if possible, a sustainable financing mechanism to support and sustain the distance learning program, and at the same time to have a more sustainable national ICT education policy. UNESCO can help in this way. So next slide, the last slide. That's almost all from me. And I look forward to cooperating with all the colleagues from country, from African Office of UNESCO. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Francheng. Very interesting presentation on looking at the framework of using e-learning as well as other medias to make the learning inclusive, which goes beyond the closing time, but when the schools open, and excellent examples from countries. Thank you very much. Anne-Therese, are you there? Anne-Therese? And I'm asking Madame Anne-Therese Ndongjata, the Regional Director for East Africa, to say a couple of words. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Yumiko. It's a pity I won't be able to stay on, but it already indicates that it's a very interesting topic you have chosen. Thank you, Fenshu, for what you have just shared. It's interesting listening to you because your presentation is really on normal times and what do we do in times like this. And I believe there's a lot of mobilization that's going on. I agree with you that we'll have to do some blending of approaches to make sure that we are able to really support countries going forward. But what we have confronted, what we are confronted with in Africa, really, and revealed by the COVID-19, are the very weak infrastructure we have, very weak systems. And while this is all very good, I believe what we need to also do is to make sure that We are able to engage with a lot of partners. We are able to engage with government. It requires a lot of investment. It requires a lot of capacity building. And presently, as I have read also that of Adea, sorry, I won't be listening to Albert speak, it's quite clear that there's a mix of interventions that are being used. But like you have underscored, since it was it was very unprepared, a situation of emergency, the teachers were really not prepared for it, parents not prepared for it either. But I believe there is an opportunity to learn from this unpreparedness, learn from these weak systems in order to be able to move very quickly. One of the areas, and I believe this is where IGBA would be of great help, not necessarily just now, but going forward, is what do we do with teachers and what type of skills do we give teachers? One of the interesting points we discovered from our webinar yesterday is there are some low-hanging fruits. We would not have all the teachers, but we know that we can use mobile technology. And we have Google and Facebook quite prepared to give us support in helping to build the capacity of teachers. We also have partners that have spoken about, you know, pop-up classrooms that can also be offline. So I think there are lots of opportunities also if we are better coordinated and collaborate well. One last message I want to give to you, Feng Shui, coming from headquarters, is that more and more there is the insistence that we don't just walk in and go to government. We have to work within the United Nations framework. And this is the reason why our strategy is looking at engaging the residence coordinator, the resident coordinator, engaging the partners, lead of the partners group, and engaging government, because there could be resources that may be channeled through other means. But if we are not part of the ongoing engagement, we will not have those resources. And since UNESCO is not very much endowed with a lot of resources, we must make sure that going forward, you would really mobilize the UNESCO offices so that wherever you want to be in the countries, you are accompanied by the office that covers that country. The office would then be able to make sure you are well integrated into the priorities of government. The development trajectory is changing, and we really need to ensure that as we go into countries, we work within the development framework that is in the country agreed upon. Let me leave it at that, but to just thank you. This is a very important webinar, and my area of focus always is how do we do it? And how do we do it needs to really be very measured and guided, because even if UNESCO has the ideas, UNESCO has to really get the buy-in of others and go along with them. On that note, let me thank you. I see a lot of my colleagues online. I also see somebody who I've not seen for a very long time, who is maybe coming from Mali. Am I right? That is Saib. Saïb, bonjour, c'était longtemps. Bienvenue. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne-Therese, for coming in. I'm grateful that you are supporting this initiative. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask Shem Bodo. This is a keynote from ADEA. This webinar is a joint effort between UNESCO and ADEA, Association for Development Education in Africa. ADEA has done an excellent survey of countries, what is going on. So we are going to hear from Shem. Shem, are you ready? We are putting your presentation, and you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Yumiko. Good morning, all. So this is an initiative that ADEA initiated and reached out to 15 African countries to really find out what is the situation amid the COVID pandemic in terms of continuing education at home. And out of the 15 countries, we got feedback from 12 African countries. That is Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Mauritius, Morocco, Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa, Tunisia, and Zambia. And so the foregoing is going to be really a synopsis of what we really found out from those countries. We have the main report, which is currently with those who submitted the information, and it's being validated. And after that, we'll make it available. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, we are there. Okay, in terms of the national strategies that we found, first of all, what was interesting was that there were high-level committees created in all the countries, really, and also working groups at the sub-national level, which were really in line, and they're really in line with the presidential emergency committees that have been formed in the countries to really deal with the pandemic. And so that was one of the national strategies, you know. And also we had a diversified use of different platforms and tools to ensure that learning continues. We are talking here about, you know, the traditional ones, the radio, the TV, and then also the digital ones, which are really a diverse amount. And also we saw that in line with that, the governments negotiated with some of the private players, the telecommunication providers, as well as mobile technology providers, really to zero rate, you know, some of the access platforms, and also provide some kind of free bundles for learners to use to access digital content and also to access the learning. And also what was interesting is that many of the countries actually accorded the first priority to learners in the examination classes, really to prepare them for the coming examinations. And this was at different levels. And also in a case like for Morocco, also learners where we have highest enrollments. And some countries also organize remedial lessons, at least in terms of revision, which we saw, for example, even in Cote d'Ivoire, so that learning can continue. Then there was the interesting aspect of programs or content that is provided by the private players. And I think it was important that countries establish validation systems, you know, a kind of a quality assurance system, so that the content that learners receive have already gone through the government system. So that was one of the strategies. Then Morocco had an interesting strategy of creating an online listening service, having a toll-free number and also an email address where really the learners, the educators, and the parents could reach out to experts who are online to ask questions and to ask for clarifications and all that. So those are few of the strategies that I can highlight in this presentation. Next slide, please. So in terms of the teaching and learning platforms and tools that countries are using, we found a diversity, as I mentioned. Of course, we had those dedicated public, private, and community radio channels, as well as television channels, with clear lesson schedules. But of course, the issue is to what extent the duration of those lessons was adequate for the learners, because we saw that in some countries, the 30 minutes or the 45-minute lessons were not adequate, especially where new topics were being introduced. And so that was a challenge. Then, of course, in all the countries, there are digital content available in the ministry websites, as well as other related institutional websites and portals where students, learners can access. And then the use of the interactive audio and video conferencing platforms, we also saw, and the myriad of applications like the one we're using now for meetings, Zoom, Google Classroom, as well as really WhatsApp and Skype were big use. And there were various other online digital applications in use. Next slide, please. In terms of the stakeholder engagement, all the countries really indicated that they are working with a diversity of stakeholders at the different levels. Of course, within the public sectors, there is also the line ministries and other government institutions. We are looking at finance, etc., the internal security, very critical. Of course, health, the ICT, and also the media and broadcasting, and also the teachers' unions and the school management committees and parents' associations in many of the countries. In the private sector, of course, using the private radio and television media houses, telecommunication companies, as well as some of the edtech companies, entrepreneurs, And then, of course, the development partners who have really come in a big way through the local education groups, and then the involvement of the civil society. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of addressing inclusion, this we found to be a major challenge in many of the countries, if not all. Because apart from using the radio and television for flighting lessons, and also with the addition of sign language in some cases, there was really not much evidence of deliberate initiatives that are aimed at addressing this issue of inclusion. We had some 3 cases in Burkina Faso, for example. They reported that we have the non-governmental organizations, as well as community associations that are providing certain interventions to those in the non-formal education area. In Morocco, they indicated that they are rebroadcasting some of the lessons that are done on weekdays, on weekends, so that at least those who are not able to catch them during weekdays were able to catch up on the weekends. And then in South Africa, they specifically talked about zero rating access to educational content, of course, in terms of agreement with the telecommunication players, so that this can reach the poor communities. And also really having agreement with providers to provide some devices, for example, smartphones, so that the learners with special needs can also be addressed. So in this particular area, it is a major challenge. For example, where we found cases where we have households with TVs or radios, you would find that there's a monopoly. There are cases where actually parents monopolize the radio and the TV. And therefore, unless the governments came out with a clear communication to really advise parents to give their radios time for their learners to access radios and TVs, those learners were really missing out. And of course, the issue of parents or guardians who are not literate is really very difficult to support even learners when they have questions to ask, even after listening to the radio and the TV programs. And then, of course, there are cases where we have learners with increased household chores because now they're at home. And then we are increasingly finding cases of also learners who are abused because following maybe some domestic abuses that are going on in the home. The issue of weak supervision by some parents, and you'll find that this brings out the fact that many of the learners are also just going out to the centers to roam about, and some are up to not very good intentions. So next slide, please. So in terms of gaps and challenges, which I've really highlighted, I think inclusion I've already talked about, and also lack of time to adequately prepare the educators for online lesson delivery. I mean, we know that the measures that were put in place were very urgent, and they were put immediately without really proper planning. So educators are not really necessarily trained to work from home because it requires a different approach. And then also the lack of clarity on how they can be capacitated to adopt and use ICT solutions to deliver content to the learners. And also guidelines in assessment. How do you assess learners remotely? How do you assess practicals? How do you assess, for example, the soft skills? And that was really a gap that we found, and the homeworks and assessments. Then in the area of financing, this is of course a major issue and has been a major issue. And perhaps this is the time to think about how to bring in the African Education, Science and Technology Fund that is being championed by the African Union, as well as ADEA and the African Development Bank. Perhaps this is the time countries need to come on board with this. Then I've talked about weak parental supervision, the issue of quality assurance in some of the assessments, really knowing, especially on higher classes or higher levels, knowing that what has been submitted is really a true reflection of what the learner has done is an issue. And then
you have just 1 minute. Please kindly wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, on the issue of M&E, that is really a major issue. So what are some of the good practices? I think we have already mentioned some of them. A key one is ensuring country ownership of the process through the establishment of the committees I've talked about. And then the use of diverse media and tools, prioritizing the initial focus on learners in examination classes, and then of course the public-private partnership that has really been evidenced, and then validation of content by private players, and having a central forum where really learners, the educators, and parents can interact, engage with experts. Next slide. I'm almost finishing. Now, the lessons, some of the lessons learned, we realize that it's really an opportunity to pool the skills and resources of the different players together. And then, yeah, next slide, please, is on lessons learned. And optimizing the use of the dedicated national radio and TV channels really helps to reduce inequalities somewhat in the provision of digital learning. And also the issue of having a commitment, mobilization, and responsible civic involvement of all actors is really important for the success of any national distance education project that can be undertaken. And then a key issue is that there's need for prior development of great expertise in the field of distance education. And really, we have been talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and for many, this is something which has really been hanging in the air. But really with the COVID, it has come right down to the ground. And it is a high time that we really rethought the education sector. Next slide, I'll skip the reflections and go straight to the conclusion because of time. So the next slide, please. So to conclude, it is time that the education sector in Africa puts in place a well-planned, well-resourced Ubuntu or UTU education plan that can insulate the sector from disruptions due to disasters and emergencies. That perhaps means leveraging available technology, investing heavily in virtual learning. That means perhaps taking advantage of the ongoing regional integration so that we can quickly harmonize the course contents and pool our resources and skills so that we can promote the mobility that we are looking for within the continent. And I think Anne-Therese talked about already enhancing infrastructure in learning institutions, but also more importantly, to improve the general hygiene of learners and incorporating some of the critical aspects that are emerging from this situation into the education management information system so that it can better inform the mitigation plans and strategies going forward. And finally, it is important to build a good management and teaching workforce that can really cope with distance learning in a blended approach. So thank you very much. That was a short presentation from Adea.
Thank you very much, Shem. I'm sorry to rush you, but so many people are asking for presentations to be shared. We shall share them either by email or by homepage. So thank you very much. Your conclusion is very, very convincing. We have to make African education system more resilient and even stronger. And this was very prominent conclusion. Thank you very much. Now we are going to move to the countries. We are looking at Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Ghana. So first we are asking Dr. Alfonso Tebanganwa of Rwanda to give us the distance learning happening in Rwanda. Dr. Alfonso, thank you. You have 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, good morning. Here in Kigali, we are already in the afternoon. So for the sake of information, Rwanda has started this problematic period when the first COVID-19 case appears on 14th March, where the Ministry of Education directed all schools and public institutions to close their operations and send home all students to prevent further spread of the virus. So the first slide is this first. Yes. Now I would like to just share this information about infrastructure, about how far we are with some equipment, some tool access of internet, access of computers, etc. in terms of percentage. So as you may observe here, access to computer, we are at 67% of primary school. That is individual computer per child. 67. So for smart classroom those classrooms reaches 54 of secondary schools that are classrooms that contain 50 machines, 50 laptops, connected laptops, 15 in 2 rooms. That is 100 of machines, 100 of laptops in 2 classrooms for each secondary school. So in primary school, it is not classrooms, it is not smart classrooms, but it is individual computer. But in secondary school, we have rooms in which where we find 50 per room, 50 machine, 50 computers per room. Now, for internet connectivity, we do have we reached already 36 of primary school and 52% of secondary schools. Yeah, that is internet penetration or connectivity. So for tablets and projectors, we are just commencing. We are just on starting point for only 50 primary school by some of our partners. Next. Now, for digital content, for pre-primary and primary and secondary, we have a platform where we can get an offline version of content access point without having without the need of internet. We have what we call CAPS. Those are content access point for primary schools, where we are at 53%. So people can access this content without being connected on internet. Next, those are partners. Next. Yeah, we are targeting now to working with those partners for developing capacity of ICT in education for 23 secondary school teachers. It is more than 50% of secondary school that we have to reach on this training, on this capacity building in ICT. This is for upgrading e-learning to accommodate English training for teachers, library, and career guidance. So virtual labs also development supported by this partner that we are just started. Next. Now, education technology in STEM teaching program launched to teach STEM subject using technology with virtual reality, robotics, gamification, and virtual labs. So here we are also, we do not have really figures because we are still working on, we are just starting this project for this year, and we do have some DPEs that are working, supporting this area. Next. Yeah, now about the response to the COVID-19, I can say that we acknowledge now we acknowledge now that the coming of this COVID has so far increased the number of students accessing the e-learning material. But the journey is still long, but we are on track. For example, we do have 2.5 million pupils in primary and 600 pupils, 600,000 pupils in secondary. But we are looking at measuring the impact of penetration and access of e-learning and aired lesson on TV and radio to see. I think in 1 week we'll have outcomes or results from this survey that we are going to share as well. So there are courses, content, video lesson, virtual labs linked to e-learning, YouTube channel, interactive assessment, etc. Aired lesson through radio and TV, around 10 radio and about 5 to 6 TVs are now aired every day lessons for core subject in primary and secondary education. So we are using also a guide for accessing learning. This guide is available. So we have also communicated to parents, to public, the schedule of radio and TV lessons so that every day they know on which radio, on which TV, at what time they have to listen or to watch lessons. So we have also, for those who do not have smartphones, we have 3-digit shortcode for quiz for primary and secondary TVET. But as Shem has highlighted, in this area of assessment, we still have a gap. So e-learning and 3-digit code are zero rated by all telecom. This is a good thing, by the way. All our radio and television are accepted freely to air our lesson freely, as I'm saying. So this period, it is a period where people, private sector, DPs, development partners are really mobilized to support education sector, to support education sector for maintaining pupils getting learning. So murakoze, that is thank you in Kinyarwanda.
Murakoze, Dr. Alfonso. Thank you very much for sharing with us Rwanda experience. Rwanda has probably one of the highest prevalence highest provision for IT equipment at the school level, but also you are using TV and radio and also public-private partnership. That's a very good example. We are now moving to Ethiopia. Dr. Johannes, are you there? Dr. Johannes? Dr. Johannes?
He was around a minute ago.
Okay. If Dr. Johannes cannot join us, maybe can we go to Ghana? Lucy and Veronica. Madame Lucy, Madame Veronica, are you ready to share with us a Ghanaian experience? Thank you. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're talking for Ghana. I want to say that this is just a synopsis of what is happening at the moment, and we may not have like percentages of this because this is quite a new thing in Ghana. So just like everywhere else, Ghana has been on a lockdown and right now is on a semi-lockdown. One of the things that the government did was to move very quickly and enact an act. That act bars all public gatherings, which includes churches and schools and any education institution, encourage everyone to stay at home. Now, for the school, when that happened, the Ministry of Education was very quick and they constituted a high-level committee of key stakeholders to strategize on education amidst COVID-19. And one of the things that has happened at the moment is that the Ministry of Education is trying to do everything possible to ensure learning continues, and especially for the classes that are preparing for the examination. So there is quite some focus on examination classes. The government developed, through the Ministry of Education, developed online learning programs for both basic, that is the classes that are just about to join junior secondary, and the secondary classes that are about to join the universities. So there are those two levels. And these programs are being aired on TV, basically on the government TV, that is the Ghana TV. Now, learners are encouraged to follow the series while at home, of course, under the supervision of their parents. Now, this, and for the universities is the same, but it's far much more in the private universities. That is basically for the public schools. But most of the private schools started teaching immediately online, and this is high-cost private schools, not the small academies. The high-cost private schools continued teaching all the way from kindergarten to all the classes. Now, the challenges that we find, we'll ask my colleague to talk about the challenges, and I'll come to the conclusion. Veronica? Veronica?
Yes, I'm here. So with regards to the challenges in Ghana, access to internet is very challenging because one, it is expensive to buy data, and then also not very much reliable in some areas. Even those of us in the capital city, that's Accra, sometimes we find it very difficult connecting online. And so it's a bit challenging for school children and even teachers to do the e-learning. But like Lucy said, some of the private schools, most of the private schools are in the capital city, which is in Accra. So then what they are doing is they are doing Google classrooms with their students. And I understand some are also using WhatsApp platforms. But their focus is on the final year students for the junior high schools and the senior high schools, those who are preparing to write their exams. I am told for the rest, when school reopens, eventually they have a way of, letting them catch up with what they have already missed. And for primary schools and kindergarten, government is a bit silent on them. Government is not doing anything regarding them. But I see private television stations doing e-learning for some of the kindergarten classes. There's a TV station who is doing that for kindergarten. And so that is what is happening now. So it means if you are in a remote area, those in the rural areas who do not have electricity, who do not have access to internet, it means they are marginalized in this area. So basically they are not learning, they are not doing anything. That is what I have to say.
Thank you very much. From Ghana, Lucy, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you. When we analyzed this status, one of the challenges we found is that there's a lot of emphasis on asking the parents to focus on supervising the learning that is taking place at home. And we just wondered what is the parents' priority at this particular time? And we were not able to quantify to even say how much time a parent would dedicate as much as they would want to this particular time to supervise the children. And of course, we also found that not all the homes have the televisions at all, not even to mention the rurals, even in the cities. And we also found that we have families with just a single television and there's competition of interest. There's somebody who is not learning and wants to watch the TV just because you're at home and you want entertainment. So how do you define between the child who should be learning and the other one who wants entertainment? And so we found that this is causing quite some inequalities, and we wish to recommend that as much as we are designing this program for e-learning, we must be careful to make sure that no child is left behind and measures are put in place that ensures equity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ghana. So diversity and some people who do not have access is problematic, but so we have to think of inclusion. But in Ghana also a number of mediums are used, and Lucy and Veronica are representing teachers at the Teachers Union in Ghana. We will come to Ethiopia. Dr. Johannes, are you there? Dr. Johannes is with Mr. Solomon, who is a secondary school teacher teaching 12th grade biology in the Kokede secondary and preparatory school. So Dr. Johannes and Ato Solomon, please, the floor is yours. Ato Solomon, Dr. Johannes, please go ahead. Please unmute your microphone. Your microphone is muted.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Good. Thank you very much. So we are in the same room. I think the microphone is working.
Hello, yes. All the other people, please mute your microphone. Only Dr. Johannes and Mr. Solomon can speak.
So, yes, I am Johannes. So the situation in Ethiopia is actually similar to other countries. There's a subject at national level at the ministry, the Minister of Education, Ethiopian Teachers of that committee. So I actually had lessons on the television is going on. Lesson schedule is also available. We have one national channel, TV channel, administered by Minister of Education. Also, regional education videos are organizing TV broadcast and radio as well. What we are doing is just to keep the students connected with education so that they don't consider this as a vacation time. But the challenge we have this TV and radio lessons for primary up to secondary level. That is, the lessons are focused on main core subjects. But the problem is we have challenges in providing education on practical subjects like subjects requiring activities like efficiency and the others. The other problem is we have the accessibility of these digital materials is a problem, not only in terms of education, but also the radio and the television as well. Especially children in the rural area are really affected, and so the digital divide is visible. But what we are doing is when this COVID problem is over, the teachers are getting ready to revise we are trying to cope up with the challenge. Otherwise, let alone the rural area, even in the cities, we have a problem of providing this e-learning as much as we want. That is what I have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johannes. Can you bring Mr. Solomon? And all the other people, please mute your microphone, switch off your video so that we can hear Ethiopia. Please mute your microphone, switch off your video. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, I'm Solomon.
Thank you.
Are you listening? Hello, are you listening?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. I'm Solomon from Ethiopia, especially from Asaba, one of the high schools in Addis. And immediately after the closure of the school, our government, especially the Minister of Education, nominated or invited some best teachers, to teach in simulation and selected rooms so that their activity is recorded, and then this is sent to families through channels. Of course, we have one government TV channel and another channels, private channels, and this is presented through these channels, so that this program is sent to every family who have got this TV. And even what interesting thing is this time the parents themselves are serving as assistant teachers because they are with their children. They are assisting them. Of course, this may not, may not be true for all family, because some families may not have this television itself, the apparatus itself, and this is one problem. Otherwise, one important thing is, for our students, Ms. Solomon and the like other teachers already prepared soft copies. These soft copies are delivered to their students, through the smartphones. Not only smartphones, through CDs, flashes, and so on. Even some hard copies are presented. This is to help some poor family having, those who do not have smartphones. And in groups, some hard copies are delivered to some students so that they can manage and proceed these activities. One important thing is this plasma program. That means lesson in TV is already done for so many years in Ethiopia, and this is just transferred to normal television, and this is listened every day, many times in a day. So this is one important thing. Another important thing within this week is happening in our school. Kokaba Sabah is one of the largest schools in Addis, and in these 2 days we are developing website. The website may contain every subject, not of course not every subject, but some subjects such as mathematics, the hard sciences such as physics, chemistry, biology, and some other subjects. So these subjects are delivered or released through this website. This website, the presence of website is, it is announced to everyone in the town. That means through banners, or they are posted. The presence of the delivery of this program is posted to every individual, or the students, or the family, or so this is happening. Of course, this will happen within this few days. Of course, we are trying this to avail having this some payment for Ethiopian telecommunication, so that we can deliver within a short period of time, or rather within a few days. So this is very important thing as to me. And our practice, especially this provision of this website, is not for our school, for the whole Addis Ababa, and for all Ethiopia. Why not every country, every other country, if the individuals or the institution gets this website? So this is one very good aspect. So we are doing this. So otherwise, of course, the internet problem is common, but at least we have TVs, we have radios. Radio program is already common in primary schools up to now. Not only this period, for many years the radio program is available. I think you are listening, hearing, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, now I am. So the radio program is common in Ethiopia for especially primary schools in every corner. Now, but this radio program was at past. It is for a few period of time, but this time within a day, so many periods. This is presented, so that every individual, every parent, every student can use this program. So this is what we are doing this period of time. And especially as I said, this website program is very, very essential for our schools. And this is what we are doing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ato Solomon, and thank you very much, Dr. Hannes. I'm Segnalo. So the sound wasn't very good, but I'll just highlight a few things that Ato Solomon, who is teaching at the secondary school, has shared soft copies of materials, flash disks, and as well as hard copies for those people who do not have a computer and the connectivity. He also outlined existing TV program has been used, and it has been shown every day for secondary school science subjects, and the radio programs, which goes to all the parts of the country. has been also used. So here is a very important point that already existing materials can be used and then are being used in Ethiopia during the school closure. It is not so much of e-learning, but TV and radio. And finally, Mr. Solomon's school is creating a website where students can access not only his school students, but all the students in Ethiopia. So that's a great contribution. So thank you very much for all the presentations from Rwanda, Ghana, and Ethiopia. I'm going to invite Dr. Binyam for summarizing some of the questions and comments. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Binyam.
Thank you very much, Yumiko. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, colleagues, for all your questions and comments. There are several comments and questions and requests, but in the interest of time, we will summarize a few of those major issues that were raised repeatedly. The first issue that was raised is in connection to the issue of inclusivity. There are several questions about how to ensure inclusivity in relations to the digital divide. Colleagues were asking how we could use mobile technology in order to ensure this digital divide. So that's one issue that the speakers could comment about. The second one is about the issue of sustainability beyond the COVID-19 crisis. Colleagues were asking how the crisis could be a wake-up call and thinking beyond COVID-19, how to use the experience that we have recently on distance learning to expand access to education. So this is the issue about sustainability beyond COVID-19. The third point that was repeatedly raised is on the issue of reaching out to marginalized communities and children in emergencies. So colleagues were asking how several of these innovative strategies that are being tried to provide education could be used to reach out to marginalized communities and children in emergencies. So these are three key issues that were raised in the chat box, and thank you very much. Over to you, Yumiko.
Thank you very much for the excellent summaries. I'm going to ask all the presenters to respond or give their thoughts to all these questions and comments. Can we ask Penchun to come? Penchun?
Yes, thank you, Yumiko. I want to make some short response to some of the questions. First of all, I think the first question is that how we could mobilize the mobile technology to enhance the inclusion of the distance learning program. Because according to the survey introduced by our dear colleagues, indeed, there's a big problem in terms of accessibility in the African continent. I have been working directly with Mozambique. Our colleague from Mozambique informed me that the penetration of the household electricity is around 22%, and even the accessibility to the TV by home, by family, is also around 22%. So it's very challenging. I think in this context, I agree with the colleagues participants who raised the question. We need to make best of the offline solution, and not only the TV. It's not only to deliver the TV program and reach all the corners, but we need to. There's two further issues. First of all, how we should mobilize teachers to design distance learning activity, the learning activity, not only the teaching activity, based on the TV programs, meaning that how we could mobilize the students to really watch the TV and learn from the TV programs. And instead of leaving the teachers sitting at home doing nothing, because the TV program broadcasting will be only recorded with a very limited number of teachers. Usually they are the master teacher, and the majority of the teacher if we don't mobilize them, they will sit at home, assuming that the students are learning or not learning. We need to mobilize teachers, help teachers to design the activity. And secondly, we need to give them guidance on how to monitor the learning process, every 2 days, if not possible, every week, to design some small exercise, small test. We call them formative assessment, to really to see whether and how many students are learning and how well they are learning, and what's the adjusted learning strategy or learning management strategy they should put in place. And we have some lessons. I think we need to do that. But for this purpose, we also actually, there's a lot of mobile learning applications that are being developed and used, particularly in African country. Even a couple of days ago, one of my colleagues from a very young partner organization from Kenya shared with us an application called M-Schuler. It's a kind of mobile learning management application that helps the teachers to use a very simple text message to manage the learning content and also manage the test. So there's a lot of innovation. We need to tap into that. And I want to stop here. But
I give you 1 minute. So 1 minute is.
Yeah, I also agree that we should think of the sustainability. As we said, UNESCO has been working with many governments in developing the national ICT education policies and master plan. And we should take this opportunity to think how we could develop a long-term policy, and particularly a financing mechanism, especially the innovative financing mechanism to sustain the distance learning programs, and to really integrate some component, not all of them, into the regular schooling system. So we look forward to working with the African country. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Fanchen. Hashem, would you like to come for 1 minute? You don't have to repeat what was said before. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I think in addition to what has been said, I think it is important to really have a comprehensive approach to this, especially in answering the first question. I think we could leverage mobile technology, because as I said before, this did not really come through as being used a lot by the countries. So we need a robust engagement with the mobile telecommunication players so that we can see how to zero rate and even supply some of the devices across the countries. Now, we could also use the experience, for example, of UNESCO on radio, the use of radio to go to reach the corners of the countries. I remember UNESCO had a program called Iripalop in Mozambique, which I believe was very successful. So you could actually borrow from such experiences to really make use of the radio. In terms of sustainability beyond COVID, I think we need a blended approach. I think we must have a mind change, not to see technology as a problem, but to see how technology can complement already the existing approaches. I think that is where I would stop. Thank you, Yumiko.
Thank you very much, Shem. Alfonso, would you like to respond to some of the questions and comments? And especially, there was a question on the online content. How are they being packaged? Would you like to also respond to this? Over to you, Dr. Alfonso.
Thank you, Miko. Can you repeat again the question? I didn't get it.
Okay, the last the question which came after the Binyam's summary was that the online content. How are they being packaged? So maybe that's something that you have already done in Rwanda.
Yeah, already before this pandemic coming in, we have online resources. We have digital resources, storybooks, and other didactic or pedagogical materials are accessible or are accessible online, or from primary to end secondary. So all subjects, all levels, content is available online, and on through our website, the website of the Ministry of Education. So with this period, within this period, so we have started now to air some of this content subject by subject, because it is time is limited with radio and television. But again, what I've posted here in messages is that I've forgotten to say that we are establishing a radio broadcasts dedicated only for education matters. I think this will also help a lot to get a student following lessons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alfonso. May I ask Madame Lucy, Madame Nick from Ghana, please?
Thank you. I will start with the question on monitoring of what is happening. I think that is very crucial because we need to ensure that when we say children are learning online, how do we monitor it? How do we account for the learning outcomes? And I think anybody designing a program now, that should be very, very important. And that brings me to the issue of greater involvement of the teachers. So that teachers are not like on holiday. Governments are paying the teachers, but teachers just don't know what to do. So we need a module to be developed telling the teachers, this is how you can monitor, this is how you can follow, and this is how you can assist the learning. The other thing that I would like to say is on the development of the content. The content, there's a lot of emphasis on the examination classes, and that is good because we know this was very unexpected. But we must know that anytime children lose, and especially the girl child, this is a very delicate moment for the girls at home and not doing anything. And so once we pay emphasis on the examination classes, we must reflect back on who is going to be in the examination next year. What is happening to that girl who can drop this particular time and we lose the child completely? The packaging should now start moving from the examination classes. And I see it as an opportunity for Africa as a continent to think outside the box, that this is something that can happen once more. And if it does, God forbid, not COVID-19, but we are always having epidemics, what is it that we have in place? So we need to start thinking of sustainability of this e-learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madame Veronique? Madame Veronica? If not, we move to Ethiopia. Ato Solomon?
Yes, please. But I don't have sufficient questions, but the only problem is we have several subjects such as sport, that means education. This is somewhat difficult for us to transmit through these channels. Also, we have several subjects, that means up to 10 subjects in high schools. So there's no sufficient time to present all these subjects in Ethiopia, especially high school, especially the main one, that means the hard science subjects, the physics, the chemistry and biology are presented, and the maths. So the problem is, there are also some students who are in a problem of side problem, and so the language is also needed. But this is not available for us. Of course, this may be helped by the families, family members, the parents. So otherwise, I don't know how can we, completely, solve these problems. This is one a challenge in our case. I don't know what to suggest. Thank you.
Thank you very much for reiterating these challenges. That's very, very useful. Dr. Johannes, are you there?
Yes.
Yes. Would you like to respond to some of the questions or comments?
I was hearing Lucy speaking from Ghana. By the way, my greetings to and other colleagues there. The problem with this situation, I mean, the issue of monitoring and evaluation. How can we improve the quality of education? I think it's difficult to speak about quality this time. Inequity is high. As I said, in some areas, we may find families without access to radio. So I think that is one problem. But what we are planning here in Ethiopia is we are getting prepared or motivating teachers or informing them to get ready to revise those contents which have been challenged through radio and television. Some sort of revision of the main contents of the presentations that has been provided through radio and television. So there is a lot to work in working on this area because we are really not comfortable with this kind of professional education. As we all understand, that is what I have for you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I am sorry, our internet connection is not very good, but I see that you are stressing the teachers' roles as well as accessibility. Now, here I am asking Tao, who is a director of Tao Zhang, who is a director of International Institute for Technology in Education, based in Moscow, UNESCO's institute, to come and provide the final comment. Tao, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me, for offering me this great opportunity.
Nairobi and Mombasa enhance our intervention. Okay. This is not a license for other counties to celebrate and to drop their card. Rather, it is a call to action for the rest of the country to enhance the containment measures.
Hello, Yumiko.
To ensure that the virus is kept at
Please mute your microphone if you are not speaking to this webinar, please.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tao.
Okay, thank you. It's a nice learning opportunity for me to learn the new experience in African countries from colleagues, the panelists. I am very much inspired and also encouraged by your innovation and collectively in this unprecedented and a very challenging situation. I would like to add very briefly some comments from myself. The first point is that I believe at the moment what we need the most is working together and as a team to work collectively. This is also what my institute, IITE, is doing together with ICBA, led by Ms. Yumiko, and Nairobi office, led by Andres, who left the webinar after the opening, and with a great support from other regional offices and UNESCO headquarters. And just yesterday, we had a very productive and a very successful online webinar. And we have brought in 15 partners, including private partners like Huawei, Coursera, Commonwealth of Learning, Google, Facebook, and many others for an collective action, as Andres call it, is like a big push for Africa. And all the proposals from the partners, they all came with concrete proposals for Africa: online resources, tools, expertise. And we already shared the summary of the information with Yumiko. I hope this information could be further shared with all of you. And please look at it and try to find opportunities of working together amongst ourselves and also with external partners. And this is the first point from me, as there is no easy or single solutions. However, through working together, we can find a better way in this critical situation. The second point from me is to look at the medium term. We talk a lot about, say, teachers, online resources. And I have the feeling that when we talk about online education, digital education, everyone is enjoying except teachers. They are suffering with more pressures and more requirements. This is a very unique challenge to teachers. So we need to provide better support to teachers, not just the teachers in Africa, but to all the teachers. And how, this is a question for us to think about and to take actions. For instance, I think we need more ready public tools to support teachers. And we need online resources like smart textbook or textbook-based free online resources like a package. With it, teachers can easily use them and in a way, in an innovative way for their teaching and learning. This is already happening at universities, but however, in basic education, primary and secondary school, we are far being left behind than some of the pioneers in higher education. So my point is, teachers need better supported, need to be better supported with better public tools and better packaged, smart designed online resources. That's the second point. The final point for me is when we look at the long term. And when we talk about how to better respond to this crisis, and there was another webinar organized by Feng Chun, who is also with us. It's also on distance education. And when I was giving a remark, I suggested that instead of distance education, we better use online distance education. And this is not because we do not need television, radio, that is so important at the moment. However, online education is the future. It's a future for all of us, particularly it's a future for Africa. I'm very optimistic when we look at the future. After this pandemic, when we are expecting economic booming, where will be the booming? Will be in Africa. And where will be the field? It will be online services, online education. So we need to be better prepared when we talk about futures education, better prepared for massive development and reform and even revolution of education, particularly in Africa. This is something we all hope and believe will be happening in the near future. And thank you very much again for offering this opportunity. Take good care of you and looking forward to working together with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tao, for very inspiring words. And I would like to thank all of you for a very, encouraging, inspiring sharing of information. We have many challenges, but this is clearly an opportunity. We are rebuilding stronger, rebuilding with more resilience, so that we can provide a better education to all the children in the continent. I would like
counties, protocols. Hello? Even as we bring food to them, we want this food.
Hello? Yes. Okay. We are already past the time, so let us stay safe and calm. And the next webinar, next Wednesday, will be on learning assessment. Some of the questions were addressed, or will be questions posed in this webinar will be addressed. So please join us at the same time, 2 o'clock. The invitation will be on our website. And also a lot of people asked about the presentations. They'll be on our website, www.iicba.unesco.org. I'd like to thank all the presenters. Please join me in putting your hands. Thank you very much and have a very good day.
What's the topic of next Wednesday, please?
Bye.
Bye.
What's the topic of next Wednesday?
The topic of next Wednesday is a learning assessment.
Thank you. Learning assessment.
It is on the chat board. It is written on the chat board.
Yes.
Thank you.
You can also visit our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miko. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mohammed.
Yes, yes.
Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you so much. Thank you, my dear. Thank you. See you
Ramadan
soon.
Kareem to everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Congratulations.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Salut.
You.